In my family, love always came down to what you gave, not what they actually felt for you. When I finally landed that job I'd busted my ass for, I thought maybe this time they'd show up, be proud, or at least say something. So I invited everyone over for dinner. No one came. The house stayed empty, the way it always felt around them. Then, a week later, my sister texts me out of the blue. Hey, can you pitch in for Dad's birthday gift? No congrats. No hey, good job. Just the same old expectation. So I did what I'd been taught. I gave, but this time, exactly 1 cent. Not out of spite. More like I was sending a message, a quiet receipt for all those times I'd been invisible. I thought this time would be different. I mean, I finally got the job I'd been grinding for, the one I said out loud enough times to believe in it myself. So I told my family I wanted to celebrate, just a small dinner. Nothing fancy, just us. I sent out messages early that week. Hey, I got the job. I wrote, trying to sound casual like it was no big deal. I even messaged my sister first. She usually replies fast. Nothing. Then my parents. Nothing. The silence was like another wall I hadn't noticed before. I went grocery shopping the evening before. I picked out ingredients for a simple dinner. Pasta, salad, something I knew they kinda liked. I spent more time than I thought arranging the table, putting out candles I'd had in a drawer for years. I set 4 places for empty chairs, thinking maybe they'd show up. In my head, I was already hearing the laughter, the chatter, the clinks of glasses. Instead, the house stayed quiet. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a yeah, I'll be there, or even a sorry, busy. But all I got were those damn silent notifications, nothing but the clock ticking louder. By the time it should have started, I had cooked everything and was sitting at the kitchen table alone. I looked around at the empty chairs and felt my throat tighten. The food started to cool down, and I just stared at the plate in front of me. I wanted to be angry, at them, at the situation, but mostly, I just felt sad. How could they not even say anything? Not a word about my new job, my push to change something. It hurt way more than I expected. The house was so quiet, I thought maybe I was imagining it. I forced myself to eat, but every bite tasted like disappointment. That silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like an accusation. Like I didn't matter enough to even interrupt their day. I knew I should have called them or gone over, but part of me held on to the hope they'd show up, that the messages just got lost or they were running late. I wanted to believe someone cared. After a while, I cleared the table slowly, almost mechanically. The dishes felt too heavy in my hands, like they carried all the things I was trying to swallow down. I went into the living room and sat by myself, my phone still dead silent in my lap. I kept thinking, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's just one night, one bad day for all of us. But it felt like that night stretched out, longer and longer, piling onto every moment when I'd been invisible all these years. I realized then I was angry, not just at them, but at myself. Why did I keep expecting something different? Why did I set myself up for this? Maybe I'd fooled myself into thinking I'd changed. Maybe this job was supposed to mean something to them, but it didn't. I don't know if they ever cared at all, or if I ever really mattered. I sat there with 4 empty chairs and the kind of silence you can't even toast to. No one came. The night ended with me alone and the echo of my own hopes bouncing back. It was the first real crack in the way I saw my family, and it pounded louder than any celebration ever could. I thought that night was just a bad moment, but the silence told me something else. It was just a week after the dinner no one showed up to. I kept refreshing my phone, hoping for some kind of message, an apology, anything. But silence. Then the group chat finally lit up again. Guess what? Not one word about the no-show. Not a single hey, sorry we bailed, or wish I'd been there. Instead, it exploded with messages about Dad's birthday coming up. The family chat went from dust to blazing alive overnight, but only because money was involved. Suddenly, everyone was concerned about where and when, who was bringing the cake, and, of course, the gifts. It hit me right then how spare the interest was when it wasn't about cash. Everyone could have cared less about spending actual time together unless there was a financial incentive lurking somewhere. Lisa was asking about budgets. Mark was pushing for an upscale restaurant, and Mom was typing fast, telling us all what Dad hinted at wanting this year. Me? I just sat there, staring at the flood of blue and gray bubbles on my screen, feeling like the forgotten ghost the week before. It was like a cruel joke. Family chat wasn't dead. It just needed a financial emergency to resurrect. I typed something sarcastic, something half-joking about how this group seems alive only when Dad's credit card is in the game. No one responded. That alone was a statement. The more I read through the messages, the heavier this bitter weight sat on my chest. It wasn't just frustration. It was the realization masked as anger. They were all there, ready to strategize over some buying and spending, but absent when it came to showing up, to being present. I remember thinking, maybe I'm the one who's wrong here. Maybe this is just how grown-up families work. Money pulls people together, not feelings. But even that thought couldn't mask the sharp sting of being sidelined when it wasn't about price tags or presents. Then Mom announced the restaurant choice. It was expensive, like it never occurred to anyone to think about what Dad actually wanted. Or maybe they did, and it didn't fit the image of the night. I debated whether to say something, but stopped. What would be the point? Requesting something simple would get lost in the noise anyway. At one point, Mark tried to rally us like it was some shiny, happy reunion, saying, "Let's make this birthday count. Dad deserves it." I hated him just then, as if buying a nice dinner could patch whatever was breaking in this mess we called a family. I put the phone down, heart twisting. I hated how excited they were to drop money, but how quiet they'd been when it was about sharing time. I hated feeling like my feelings didn't matter unless they came with a receipt or a credit card in the middle. It was ironic, the whole damn thing. How quickly family sprang to life when money did, and how quiet they'd been when it actually needed to be about us. But maybe the worst part was the clarity creeping in. This wasn't some fluke. This was what I'd been ignoring all along. We'd never been good at the small, real stuff. We only came together for the big, expensive gestures that looked good from the outside. And maybe I was expecting something that didn't exist anymore, or maybe it never did. I shut my eyes, breathing slow. I wanted to say how much it hurt, how lonely that made me feel. Instead, I typed one last message, short, dry. Guess money still talks louder than family. I hit send and watched the conversation pick up again without me. I thought it was just another family night gearing up, but the emptiness stayed deep. I thought it was over, but the silence that followed said otherwise. They cornered me again about money, like clockwork. First my sister, voice tight with that usual mix of fake sweetness and disappointment. "You don't appreciate anything we do you? After all we've given you." Then my brother, his tone softer, but just as crushing. "Maybe if you helped out a bit, we wouldn't have to remind you so much." They didn't even ask. It was all you owe us wrapped in different words. I just sat there, my fingers twitching on my lap, throat tight. I could have snapped, told them to stop, screamed how wrong they were, but I didn't. Something inside me wound tighter instead, quiet but firm. I knew if I argued, it wouldn't make a difference. They were operating on some script I couldn't rewrite. They thought money was love, and silence was weakness. So I stayed silent. Let them talk past me, drag me deeper into whatever guilt trip they'd cooked up this time. Later, alone in my room, I stared at the thin wad of cash I'd hidden away, just enough to buy something small. It felt heavy in my hand, heavier than usual. Maybe because it wasn't just money anymore. If money was how they measured love, then I'd show them exactly how much theirs was worth. The next day, I did it. I went to the store and picked out the cheapest bottle of their favorite liquor, something they always said was too expensive for me to buy. I wrapped it up carefully, not to look obvious. I could have spent more, but I didn't want to. When I handed it over, their faces shifted, like they weren't sure if I was mocking them or finally getting it. My sister's smile was tight, but there was a flicker of something else, a quiet acknowledgement maybe. My brother nodded, almost approving, but cold. I said nothing. No speeches, no apologies. Just the bottle. Inside, I felt strange, not released, not triumphant. More like I'd crossed a line I didn't want to cross, but had to. Like I was negotiating a kind of peace with myself, using their rules because I had no other way to fight. They kept talking about gratitude, responsibility, how family means sacrifices. But I saw past the noise. Their love came with conditions written in receipts and ledgers. And if they wanted to trade affection for money, I'd meet them there, without a word. There was a bitter kind of irony in that. They wanted me to prove I cared in their currency, so I did. But it wasn't love I was buying or selling, just a claim, a tally of what we'd give and take. When I walked away from that moment, I realized I wasn't the same person who'd sat there, quiet, swallowing their insults. Something inside me had settled into a calm place, a resolve that didn't need noise or anger to hold steady. Maybe this was how I chose to fight back, not with shouts or tears, but with a quiet refusal to play by their rules. But even as I felt that quiet certainty, a part of me was aching. Sad because this felt like the best I could do, and because deep down I still wanted it to mean more than money. And maybe that's the hardest part, knowing what you want, but also knowing it isn't coming. So I waited, holding that bottle like a pact. Not hope exactly, not surrender either, just something in between. I thought that would be enough, but it wasn't. I sat in my car, phone in hand, the screen glowing in the dark parking lot. I stared at the transfer app, the cursor blinking like it was daring me to hit send. It was ridiculous, sending money to someone I barely spoke to, after everything that happened. But I couldn't stop myself. I typed 1 cent, literally one, just to make a point. Then, in the message box, I wrote, "Happy birthday, Dad." I looked at that tiny sentence. No emojis, no fluff, just those 3 words. It felt like the barest acknowledgement possible, like the smallest thing I could give without truly giving anything at all. I tapped send, and at that moment, the weight on my chest lifted a little. Not because I thought it would change anything between us, but because I'd finally said something. Not with words I had to say out loud, but in a way only I would understand. 1 cent, the exact value of being remembered only when they needed something. I parked there a few more minutes after sending it, heart pounding from the mix of anger and relief. I felt powerful in that tiny gesture, like I got to reclaim a piece of myself for just a moment. But underneath, there was this gnawing guilt. The kind of guilt that sneaks in when you've shut someone out, even if they hurt you. I knew it wasn't about the money. It was a reminder, a needle prick of everything I couldn't fix. Part of me wanted him to see it, to flare up with confusion or even anger. Part of me hated the idea that he might just ignore it and keep living like nothing had changed. I tried to convince myself that this was enough, that standing in my own boundaries was enough for now. But then something else hit me, a quiet, subtle kind of relief. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to wait for a tragic moment or a fake apology. I did what I could on my terms. It was messy, incomplete, but it was mine. I shut off the phone and sat back, the night pressing in around me. The silence was thick, but I didn't feel the weight of it like before. Not completely. I thought about all the birthdays past, the times I'd hoped for a call or text that never came. This tiny transfer was my way of ending that cycle, for now. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. It was a line in the sand, a quiet damnation wrapped in a joke. I drove away with the feeling that the story wasn't over. But for once, I controlled the narrative. And even if it didn't change anything on his end, it shifted something inside me. But then my phone buzzed. I glanced down, heart sinking when I saw his name pop up on the screen. The message tone wasn't new. It was the call for attention I wasn't sure I was ready for. I didn't know if I should answer. My phone lit up like crazy. Messages pouring in, one after another, all of them blowing up my group chat. I didn't even have to look to know what it was. The same old accusations, the bullshit moral lectures, the victim act playing out again. I sat there, frozen, scrolling without a word, watching them tear each other apart. They were shouting through screens like it mattered, but I was already gone before they even started. The text came faster than I could read, jagged edges of anger and blame flying everywhere. How could you do this? You destroyed everything. We trusted you, and you lied. Each message was a punch, but I didn't throw any back. I just kept scrolling. At first, the anger bubbled up, heat in my chest, and a tight knot in my throat. I wanted to fire off something, anything, just to clear the air or maybe fight back. But all it felt like was feeding a fire I didn't want to be near. So I stayed quiet, numb and watching. It was like being stuck in a room full of voices yelling at me, and I couldn't find my own. There was this moment, maybe after a dozen messages flashing on my screen, where I realized none of it was about me anymore. It was about the story they wanted to tell themselves, the victim, the betrayal, the righteous verdict. I saw through all of it like a glass wall. I was there, but not really part of the chaos. It was startling how clear that feeling was, cold and quiet underneath all the noise. Anger was still there, but mixed with this calm. I wasn't going to keep fighting ghosts. I hadn't replied to a single text, but suddenly I felt like I was done. The texts kept coming, one accusing me directly. You owe us an explanation. Another sneering. We all saw the truth. There was no truth anymore, just noise. I could feel their words spinning in my head like they wanted me to crack, but I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. Without thinking too much, I hit that little delete chat button. Just like that, the entire conversation gone. No snap judgments, no dramatic replies. Just nothing. It was like wiping a chalkboard clean after it's been smudged too much. That quiet hit me. The kind that comes when you finally shut off the screaming voices around you. I stared at the empty screen, and somewhere deep down, I felt this weird mix of relief and sadness. Relief because the storm was over, even if only on my phone. Sadness because I knew deleting the chat didn't change anything in real life. It was just a pause, and maybe I was fooling myself. Maybe I thought silence meant I was stronger, but maybe it just meant I was too tired to care anymore. I thought about writing something later, explaining myself, or defending the parts they were still twisting. But that voice inside me, the one that's been trying to keep me steady, told me to hold on. It whispered that some battles don't need a fight. So I locked my phone and pushed it aside. The room was quiet except for the dull hum of the heater, and I realized I was finally seeing how little of this was actually about me. They were stuck in their stories, and I was caught somewhere between anger and clarity. And just as I was starting to feel that calm settle under all the noise, my phone buzzed again. But this time, it wasn't the group chat. It was a message from someone else, someone I hadn't expected to hear from. My heart stopped for a second when I saw it. I remember being about 8 or 9, maybe. My parents weren't the kind to say good job for the little stuff. If the sink was clogged or the garbage piled up, they didn't ask me to do it because they appreciated me. It was just expected. Like I was some tool meant to get things done, nothing more. I'd come home from school, shoes soaking in the mud, and instead of asking how my day went, I'd be handed a mop or told to tidy the backyard. I learned early on that being useful was the quickest way to avoid trouble. But liking me? Never a thing. I'd fix a leaky faucet or organize the pantry. Things that were invisible if they worked. No praise, no thanks. Only a grunt or, worse, a critique when it wasn't done right. I figured if I said nothing and did my chores, maybe I could keep the peace. It felt like I was this invisible glue holding things together. I was the family's spare tire, always needed, never celebrated. I remember once, I scraped my knee really bad while chasing the dog out of the street. I crawled inside, my pants soaked with blood. My dad looked up from his newspaper and said, "Don't bring that mess in here." I shuffled off to clean it up, quieter. Later, I overheard him on the phone, bragging about how the kid is so responsible, takes care of the place. Responsible meant invisible, meant no complaints. I hated hearing that. Hated how I was only good, as long as I kept working without a fuss. Sometimes I think they thought affection cost something, like they had to earn or trade it. Like when I helped my mom dig through receipts to find some refund or found the missing keys she lost every week. She'd say, "I don't know what I'd do without you." But I never heard, "I love you," unless it was a quick, distracted mumble squeezed between tasks. I was like a tool they pulled out when they needed it, then tucked away when they didn't. That pattern stuck. It wasn't just chores or favors. It was how the whole family operated. Emotions were baggage, guilt or frustration at best. So, the best I could hope for was being useful. I learned to read needs, solve problems, anticipate what would calm things down. Kind of like a survival skill. I think, deep down, I wanted to feel more. But messing up was dangerous. Too often, love was conditional. Do the thing right, or you don't get it. That made me bitter, even as a kid. Bitterness wrapped in this aching need to belong. Sometimes I wonder if they even noticed what they were doing. Maybe it was how they'd been raised. Some cold generational hand-me-down nobody questioned. Makes me sad, too, because I see now how it shaped me, made me believe I had to be perfect or I wasn't worth anything, that I had to earn every ounce of care. I'm not sure if that means they didn't love me or just didn't know how to show it without the price tag attached. When I think back, there's this strange mix of nostalgia for the quiet moments when I was allowed to just be me and bitterness for the constant pressure that came with being the fixer. I wanted to be celebrated, not just needed. But maybe I understood it better now than I did then. Maybe that's why I repeat it without even realizing, because sometimes it's the only way I know to feel safe. I don't think I ever really felt enough just by existing. Like the whole time, I was wearing this invisible badge that said, "Use me, but don't love me too much." And maybe that's why I kept pushing myself so hard later on. For approval, for that rare moment of feeling seen. I thought that back then, the silence was harmless. But it wasn't. It's carved into me more than I wanted to admit. And I don't know how to stop that cycle from running in me now. Weeks passed, and I didn't hear a word from them. No calls, no messages, no forced greetings. At first, that silence was a weight I couldn't shake, this thick, ugly quiet that sat in the room like a stranger. But slowly, something shifted. The more they stayed out of my life, the more room I had to breathe. I started to sleep better. Not every night, but better than I had in months. I didn't look at my phone with dread or hope. I woke up and took the time to make breakfast without rushing. Made the bed. Went for runs. It felt like I was patching up cracks I didn't even know were so deep. I didn't even realize how much I'd been waiting. To hear their version, to explain myself again, to fight. But none of that happened. And with no noise coming in, I began to appreciate the quiet inside me. But then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. "Are you still mad?" she asked, like it was the last thing in the world that mattered. I stared at the screen, my heart tightening in that familiar place, the one I thought had healed. I didn't want to reply right away. I didn't want to snap back, or explain myself, or get pulled into that old dance where my feelings were always the problem. I typed back slowly. "I'm not mad. I'm just taking care of myself." She didn't reply. It wasn't a confrontation, but the question was a line in the sand. Like they were still trying to decide if I was the enemy or if I could still be fixed. I didn't want to remind them that I'd found a little peace, even if it came at the cost of distance and silence. It was relief, mostly. Relief that I didn't have to keep pretending the damage was going to be patched with empty words. Relief that for once, I wasn't the one begging for validation. But there was sadness beneath it all. Sadness that it had come to this. That the people who were supposed to be my safe place were so tangled up in their own versions of right and wrong that we couldn't figure out how to exist together. It felt like a slow burn, that sadness. Not sharp, but persistent. Sometimes I caught myself looking back, imagining what it would be like if they just said the right thing, reached out without strings, without blame. But that was a story for someone else. I kept saying to myself, they called it holding a grudge. I called it healing. Because it wasn't about keeping score anymore. It was about protecting the parts of me that nearly broke from trying to hold us all together. The quiet days taught me to listen, to my own needs, my limits, and the truth that sometimes love isn't loud or forgiven. Sometimes it's a door that remains closed for good. I'm not sure if that makes me stronger or just resigned. Maybe a bit of both. But when I put my phone down after that last message, there was a calm I hadn't felt in a long time. A kind of quiet strength. And yet, even as I sank back into that calm, there was this tiny edge of doubt creeping in. Maybe it really wasn't over. Aunt Lisa left a voicemail last week. Just a minute, something like, "We're having a tough time, sweetie. If you can help out, even a little, it'd mean the world." And then a quick, "Call me back." No specifics, just that usual vague plea. I deleted it. I checked my phone again this morning. No new messages from her or anyone else from that side of the family. And honestly, it felt peaceful. Not a rush, not the adrenaline spike I used to get when the phone rang and saw their names. Just quiet. It's not because I don't care. I do, in a pit in my stomach way that hasn't gone away. They're family, after all. But this time I'm done letting it drag me under. When Aunt Lisa texted me last week, her words dripping with that familiar desperation, I didn't respond. I read it, waited a minute, and then moved my thumb away, running the calculations in my head, weighing the endless borrowing, the gaps where money always seemed to disappear, the promises whispered and broken. I just couldn't. I guess, somewhere, I realized I'm done with being their safety net. I've learned the hard way that helping them never stopped the mess. It only made me exhaust every bit of patience and savings I had. So this isn't cruelty. It's boundary. It's a line I finally drew, and I'm holding it firm. That moment alone, ignoring the message, felt like reclaiming a little piece of myself. I remember the last time I tried to help, about 2 months ago. I sent a bit of cash, not because I wanted to, but because I kept hearing their panic through the phone. And what did I get? A fade-out, deafening silence afterward. Every time I lent them money, I wasn't just giving cash. I was throwing away my peace. It felt like financing my own disrespect, and I stopped doing that. I'm not angry, not anymore. If anything, there's a thread of pity tangled in my chest when I think about them. They're stuck in the same cycles, unable, or unwilling, to fix the root of their problems, always circling back for another bailout. It's sad to watch, but I can only carry so much before it crushes me. Yesterday, my cousin, who's usually the most direct of the bunch, Sent a muted, hope you're doing well message. No money mentioned, no guilt trips, just that. I didn't reply. I wanted to, maybe, to say something like, I'm here when you're ready to actually change, but I didn't. I realized that some things don't need saying. There's closure in silence. I used to think walking away would be harder, that I'd feel guilty, or selfish, or miserable. But it's the opposite. The weight I didn't realize I was carrying feels lighter now. Maybe it's naive. I catch myself wondering if I should have kept trying, just one more time. But the truth is, I'm relieved. I'm tired of being the financial plug for a family that doesn't respect what I'm giving. I don't hate them. Not really. I just stopped financing my own disrespect. The phone stayed quiet today. No calls, no messages. And in that quiet, I felt something else, a little peace. Maybe even closure. But part of me still waits for it to break. The calm before whatever storm they think they can roll back in with next. I thought ignoring them meant the mess was over. Turns out, sometimes silence just screams louder. I wasn't expecting the call, not at all. My phone lit up with his number, and my heart stopped for a beat, like I'd been punched in the gut. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick it up. Hey. His voice was quieter than I remembered. Older, rougher, but somehow softer. There was this awkward pause, like he wasn't sure how to start or if he should have called at all. Hi, I said. My voice came out flat. Is everything okay? Yeah, he said, but it didn't sound like yeah. More like he was just trying to get me talking. Then he let out a short breath, that tense sound people make when they're trying to do something difficult but don't want to mess it up. Look, I just wanted to say you're doing well, huh? That caught me off guard. I thought maybe he'd call to talk about the money, or to argue, or to tell me I'd screwed up. But none of that came. Just that line, like a small flag of acknowledgement waved clumsily across the room. Yeah, I muttered. I didn't know what else to say. It wasn't really a question or an invitation. More like he'd thrown a word in the air and hoped I'd catch it somehow. I guess I'm proud, he added, almost under his breath. Not like bragging, more like admitting something he'd never say out loud. Then he cleared his throat and went silent again. I wanted to ask more. About everything that had happened between us, about the years lost, about the pain and the grudges and the nights I sat wondering if he even thought about me. But the words stuck in my throat. The man on the other end wasn't the person I needed to hear from, not in the way I needed. Instead, I said, thanks. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest thing he'd ever manage. We both knew there were 1,000 things left unsaid, things he probably never would say. And some part of me realized I wasn't going to get all the answers just because he called. Or maybe I was finally okay with that. The line was quiet. I could hear him breathing, steady. Somewhere behind that, I heard the weight of everything. Regrets, missed chances, the distance we'd built to protect ourselves. But for the first time, there was something tender in the quiet. Take care, I said finally. It felt like closing a chapter. You too, he replied. When I hung up, the silence was different. Not empty, but full, like something fragile had shifted. I wasn't lighter or freer or healed, but I didn't feel trapped in the past anymore. Maybe this was how it ends. Not with a big confrontation or a clean break, but with an awkward, quiet moment that neither of us knew quite how to handle. I kept staring at my phone after I put it down. The screen was dark, but the echo of his words was still there, faint but real. I thought it was over, but the silence that followed said otherwise. I'm sitting at the same table again. Same cramped kitchen, same chipped plate, same faded napkin on the side. But none of it feels empty tonight. Last time I sat alone here, it hurt. Felt like every tick of the clock was mocking me. But now, this time, it feels earned. I'm eating the same kind of dinner, nothing fancy, just some pasta and tomato sauce. I'm not hungry for much else, and I don't want to spend energy cooking for someone else anymore. I look down at my plate, and instead of feeling hollow, I find a calm creeping in. The quiet isn't a punishment this time, not a reminder of who's missing or what I lost. It's a kind of peace, edged with relief, like the exhale after holding your breath too long. I think about the nights after it all finally fell apart, when I'd stare at this table and think, how did I get here? Back then, it was shame and regret tangled up with the silence, but I didn't know any better. I thought loneliness was a sentence. Now, I'm starting to see it differently. It's not the loneliness that matters, it's what you make of it. Tonight, I make peace. There's a softness around the edges of this room, the way the streetlight filters in through the curtains, how the table doesn't creak as much anymore. It's familiar, but not bitter. Because I'm not shrinking into it. I'm owning it. I am here. Alone, but not broken. I can almost feel the weight lifting, a quiet kind of gratitude for the pause, this slow rebuilding. I think about how I used to hate evenings like this, always wanting to fill the silence with noise, TV, music, anything to distract me from my own thoughts. But not tonight. Tonight, I sit with myself without flinching. There's a self-respect in that, an unexpected strength I didn't know I had. I'm not running. I'm not hiding. I'm just here. It feels strange, almost foreign, to accept this freedom. Freedom from needing someone else to make me feel whole. Not that I'm not scared sometimes. Part of me still wonders if I'll crack, if the loneliness will sneak back in and choke me like before. But right now, in this moment, I'm just free. Nobody's footsteps outside the door, no whispered fights, no cold shoulders. Just me and this steady, calm silence. I pour myself a glass of water, and the clink against the glass isn't empty sound. It's a small celebration, quiet but real. For the first time in a long time, I'm not pretending. I'm here, whole in my own skin. Maybe that sounds ironic, celebrating being alone. But I'm learning that it's less about who's missing and more about what you build inside yourself when no one else is around. That messy process took time. I was angry, broken, lost. And now, sitting here, I'm just tired enough to know peace feels better. I pick at the food, savoring the simplicity. No distractions. No need to fill the gaps with fake smiles or forced conversations. Just me breathing, existing quietly, for once not wanting more or less. I know this won't fix everything. The past still stings, and the nights aren't always this calm. But this moment, they say it's the thing that matters. This hard-earned stillness, this quiet acknowledgement that I'm okay on my own. I'm stronger than I thought. More patient, more real. I lean back, close my eyes for a second, and just feel this freedom wash over me. Not as a burden, but as a quiet blessing. I thought the whole fight, the aching, the heartbreak, would leave me shattered. Instead, it left a door open, one I didn't know I had the key to. And for now, I'm stepping through it alone. I'm not lonely tonight. I'm just free.